Thank you, Mr Limbrick. Mr McIntosh.
Acting President, well, I'm delighted to stand and support this bill today, a bill that I believe the majority of Victorians absolutely support its principles at their core, and that is getting on and dealing with climate change while providing the energy that this state needs. The bill will set the new goals for this state of net zero emissions by 2045 and the interim targets on the way there, and the 95% renewable energy target by 2035 and those interim targets as well. And Minister D'Ambrosio and everyone who has worked on our climate and energy, not just our targets and our goals up until now, but worked on implementing our renewable energy and emission reduction strategies should be commended. The fact that this state is 42.7% below our peak in emissions is commendable, and that 40% of our energy, of our electricity, is coming from renewables. And that's because this side, much like whether you look at education, whether you're looking at health, whether you're looking at transport and infrastructure, we are getting on with delivering what Victorians need, what Victorians want. Because the easiest thing in the world is to throw your hands up and say it's all too hard. But that is not what this Labor government does. We identify issues. Now, in this case, I know this is difficult for those opposite to hear, but it's science. We need to stop emitting carbon and other emissions into our atmosphere because it warms our climate. Now, we're seeing the consequences of that right here, right now. It's not something off into the future, and I'm sure even Mr Limbrick would acknowledge what it's doing to insurance premiums, what it's doing to farmers, what it's doing to people in Victoria who go to the supermarket to buy their goods. It doesn't enable sustainability in an economic sense for our farmers. It doesn't enable sustainability from an environmental perspective of every living thing in this state. It doesn't enable us the economic conditions to ignore climate change that the world is going to be setting, which we're already seeing being set around trade and dealing with other nations, particularly as an export nation and particularly as a nation with an incredible history and I believe an incredible future with manufacturing. What we have on hand with an abundant source of renewables to power our manufacturing to export to the world is an absolutely incredible opportunity. And the targets, like the targets we've set since coming into government in 2014, being a leading jurisdiction around the world, and what Minister D'Ambrosio and this government has done to set the targets to here, and the targets that from today we set to continue that work around storage, the 6 gigawatts there, around offshore wind, the 9 gigawatts, around our onshore renewables, around everything we're doing, whether it's energy efficiency and reducing demand, which, by the way, saves homeowners and saves businesses money. The power you don't need to consume saves you money, and it reduces the demand on our grid, and it reduces our emissions. So as I said, the offshore wind targets that have driven an incredible amount of investment into this state. We have literally tens of billions of dollars of investment offshore wind lined up, and those opposite, I'm going to talk into detail because those opposite like to say, we heard Miss Barth, oh yeah, offshore wind sounds really great and we support that. Now, moving right along. But I'll come back to that in detail. All of these targets that we are setting are acknowledging a problem, which is what a government has to do, which is what we, as elected members of parliament, representatives of our community, should do. Acknowledge a problem. Acknowledge science, acknowledge data, speak what is difficult truths at times, because we've got a highly carbonised economy, one of the most highly carbonised economies in the world, and we've got to transition from that. So it is a big challenge. Nobody's denying it's a big challenge, but it's about who is willing to step up and deal with the challenge. So by setting the targets, everyone has a clear understanding of what we want to do. We're setting the framework, and then that allows investment to come in, to invest in these industries, which then brings the jobs. And that's why, through our prolonged investment in TAFE and other training and engaging with school leavers, we're ensuring that the pipeline of workers with the appropriate skills to deliver the projects that we need to power this state are there and ready to go. So now we get to those opposite the no-alition. Everything is no, no, no. Even when incredibly, incredibly important events are occurring, and let's take the last month, we've had communities in absolute distress because of fires, because of storm events. We've got MPs in this place running home to get a photo of their gas stove and say, oh my God, thanks, I've got a gas stove. Now, look, it is fair to say it was good to have a gas stove at that time, but to link that to the fact that they're going to take away your gas is absolutely scandalous. There is nobody going to go into anyone's home and take their gas burners. This is absolutely ridiculous. And it just sits alongside the 20 years of inaction, of stalling that those opposite have been about, whether it's state or federal. There has been no policies come out of that side in the energy, well, let's say no sustained policy, because federally I acknowledge you had something like 16 to 20 policies in the 20 years. The rotation of the media advisor handing the current member, the Minister for Energy of the day, something that sounded good at the time. But very sadly, the policy of energy for those opposite and climate seems to have been driven by particular interests in a very, very small portion of their broader party, and that has driven the narrative for a very, very long time. And hence, they have put their head in the sand and they've been unable to engage in this issue in any meaningful way. And that's why we've got on and done it. And that's why, as I said before, we've got 40% renewable energy in this state, and we've had over 40% reduction in emissions from our peak. Now, Ms Barth was talking about Hazelwood before. It's just classic of everything that the opposition do in this space. Linking the closure of Hazelwood, which was privately owned and operated, to the broader discussion. Linking a storm that takes out power lines to people, those power lines running through bush where trees are coming down and taking them out. Like, let's get serious and talk about the serious issues that are at stake to keep power to people's houses. Not saying, oh, we need nuclear generators to resolve this issue. Have a fair dinkum conversation with voters, because that's what they want. Like, what is a nuclear generator? Let's say we get the regulatory framework in place. Let's say a small modular nuclear reactor, we can actually get the technology right, and there is one built somewhere in the Western world and they exist. Let's say it's not the most expensive form of energy, and some here decides, okay, well, we're going to fund building one. And then let's say we can actually get it done in a meaningful way that meets some of the goals and targets that we and the rest of the world need to meet to ensure a quality standard of living for people, then, you know, great. But again, it's just, okay, we've been in power for 10 years federally, haven't talked about it, but hang on a minute, what's here in the back pocket? Nuclear energy, because it's not actually about delivering anything. It's about coming in and muddying the waters and confusing people as to what's really going on. And it really is shameful, and I don't know how you on your side actually rest your head at night knowing it's such a serious issue that should be above politics. It should be above politics. Those opposite are talking about nuclear. They're spruiking it up. Look, bring it. Bring it to the people. Bring it to the people. But we know that's not what your real intent is. Your real intent is just to muddy the dialogue, to confuse people and to scare people. There was other comments around unemployment. Like, unemployment is at its lowest in regional Victoria. I was up on a constituency question talking earlier about we're 0.5% below the national average. Yet somehow this is getting tied in with renewable energy, when renewable energy is going to bring tens of thousands of jobs, tens of billions of dollars of investment, but you're selling out our people from the opportunities we're bringing through scaremongering because you can't bring any ideas to the table. There are no solutions. When you have values and you believe in something, you sit there and you think, all right, well, here's a problem. We're going to find a solution. And then you bring it to this place, you bring it to the people, you offer something they can consider, something that's deliverable, and we get on with it. But we know that is not what you lot are about. I won't even get into leadership conversations and whatnot, because God knows where it's even at. By the time anyone gets to watch this, could be 2 leaders down the track. And there was conversation before about, from Mr Limbrick, conversation casting aspersion over things, and to come back to the point, we're already 40% of the way there. The whole way, people have been saying we can't do it. And we're connected to other states. We're connected to other states. So Mr Limbrick talked about not being able to do it without hydro. We're already connected to hydro. We're connected to different wind and weather patterns around the country. So I better not go on too long because I get a bit worked up at times, but that's because this is such an important issue. It's not an issue we can just kick around like a political football and not take a responsibility for people right here, right now. As I said before, our farmers, our consumers at the supermarket, anybody who's trying to live in accommodation without an air conditioner, anybody who's trying to live in accommodation where they don't want the waters rising up underneath their house, anyone who has to pay insurance premiums, anyone who has to pay insurance premiums is pretty live to this conversation and what inaction means. Absolutely live to it. So, look, I'll finish by saying I'm absolutely supportive of the Minister and this legislation she's putting forward. The work that we have undertaken over the last decade is a massive challenge. We're up to the challenge. We're putting the targets in place. We're bringing the investment. We're identifying the workers. We're training those workers. Every single place possible where we can transition workers from previous industries that have set this state up, that have given us the economic underpinnings to be what we are now, that have driven our manufacturing sectors, powered our homes, powered our businesses. We want to bring those workers with us. It's not about saying the sky's going to fall in, it's about setting a plan, investing in the training, having the conversations, bring them along. And I think these targets, Minister D'Ambrosio will be very, very well remembered as time goes by into history, of 10, 20, 30 years go forth, for what this state has done, for the leadership we have shown, and for the energy that we'll provide to this state, and the net zero emission endpoint that we will end up with, that we enable. Thank you.